Okay. So welcome everyone. I'm Edwin Rutch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and this is our Empathy Cafe on exploring the different values that make up a culture of empathy. And I want to start off by just setting our intention. So the intention of this Empathy Cafe is to build a culture of empathy, which is what we're actually exploring. In short, just a definition of a culture. So the basic definition of a culture of empathy, it means that everyone can openly and authentically express themselves and feel heard, seen, acknowledged, and listened to and heard to their satisfaction. And we do this in a mutual way. So that means not just one person doing all the listening, but we mutually listen to each other, and we use empathic listening or active listening to do that. We're going to be going for about 2 hours. Yeah, not about, but for 2 hours. And we're going to start off with just participant introductions. So, just very short, what is your name, where you're located, and what is one value that you think is or feel that is a value that would be part of a culture of empathy. So I can start for just to model that. I'm Edwin Rutch, and I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. And the one value for me is, I think, feeling awareness, sensitivity to feelings. So Pavel, would you like to go just and share that your one value too?
So I'm Pavel, and I'm in Malta. To me, one of the most important values would be compassion.
Okay, great. Sophia?
My name is Sophia. I'm from Sweden. The most important value for me is accountability. No, responsibility.
Responsibility. Okay, thanks. Angela? Oh, we're not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. I'm Angela. I'm from Canada, Ontario, Canada. And one of the most important values for me in terms of empathy is compassion.
Another compassion, too, for compassion. Bill?
Hi, I'm Bill Filler. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. And for me, it's mutuality.
Okay. Endel?
Hi, I'm Andel. I'm in Hawaii. I am not sure. Sorry, I just woke up.
Not sure. Okay. So curiosity, maybe.
Actually, that's true. Curiosity is important rather than jumping to judgment. Be curious. Good. Thank you for answering for me.
Glad to help. Dean.
I'm Dean from Plymouth. What I would hope from a culture of empathy would be emotional intelligence.
Okay, thanks. Martha?
Yeah, so I was going to say curiosity. So now I'll say authenticity.
Okay, thanks. Sarah?
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm calling in from India. And the value for me would be respect.
Okay, respect. Thank you. The other Sarah? Are you there? Are you with us? You're muted. If you're speaking, we don't see you.
Or hear you.
Or hear you. Okay, I'll have to pass. Hope you can get your connection worked out. And Jolly? Are you there? There you are.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
We hear you. Looks very
fabulous.
comfortable there.
Yes, hi, I'm Jolly. I'm in Los Angeles, California. I think authenticity, actually, I like that one as well.
Okay, the value is authenticity that makes up one of the values of a culture of empathy. And Michelle, we were just going around introducing ourselves, our name, location, and just one value that you feel makes up a culture of empathy is part of it.
Yeah, Michelle and Galway and compassion.
Another compassion. Wow. Okay, this is the third compassion. So.
Nice.
We should put them all into one circle. The compassion group would be. Martha's doing the tech, so you don't have to do that. Okay, I just see a message from Sarah that your Zoom froze. So you might want to leave the call and then come back in. That might help you to turning off and turning on Wi-Fi, or try turning on and off Wi-Fi, Bill says. So, okay, so then, so the next we want to just explain how empathy circle works. And I don't know, Pavel, do you want to give it a shot to explain it? We have a empathy circle facilitators support, not a support group, but a training that we're doing, and Pavel and Dean are part of that. So do you feel like you'd like to give it a stab to explain how it works, Pavel, since you're in the training? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, to be honest, I feel quite unprepared. So.
Well, let me do it then. I don't want to, sorry to put you on the spot. I should have prepared you for that.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's just that I didn't prepare myself. I was doing too many other things and I didn't have a chance to go over and prepare on these type of things.
Okay, is there someone that would like to explain it? Someone else want to give it a shot? Just give you a chance to explain it, Sophie or Dean, or if not, I'll do it. No, so Dean, yes, we have a winner.
Okay, so it's a new way of talking and listening. What we do is we speak for a small amount of time, a set amount of time that's set by the facilitator, depending upon how many are in the group that we are going to be in the breakout room with. There are two main roles, and all the other members of the group are listeners. The two main roles are the speaker and the reflector, or the active listener. The term active listener means someone that listens and reflects back to the speaker without putting any of their own inferences or implications, but only their understanding of what they've heard the speaker say. So the speaker is best to not speak for the whole of the time units, but to speak into short, divisible chunks that the reflector can then reflect on without losing some of the understanding of the speaker's talking. This is very confusing. I've heard it so many times, it's all gone away from my head. I'll try and calm down. Deep breath. So the active listener reflects upon what the speaker is saying, but the speaker mustn't overtalk or speak for too long, because then it makes the job of the reflector too hard, and the reflection may not contain fully what the speaker has actually said. And the job of the reflector is to make sure that the speaker feels as though he's been fully heard. Once the time has ceased and the speaker has had their time units, and the reflector then becomes the speaker. The speaker then has to then choose someone else in the group to become the reflector. So by this changing of the roles from one person to the next, we then work our way around the group so that everyone gets a chance to become the speaker and the active listener. If you're in neither of these two roles, you are then just to passively listen and to internally reflect upon what has been said and what has been reflected between the active speaker and the active listener.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dean, for jumping right in. That's really appreciate that. And hope the next time somebody else can explain it too, so you get a chance to sort of practice it a little bit. So I do hope you will join our Empathy Circle Facilitator training, which we'll be doing ongoing. So I also will
You muted, Edwin.
Oh, good. I sang all this great stuff and I was muted. So thank you, Dean. Next week, somebody else, if somebody else wants to try, let us know and we can give you a chance. I put in a one-page description of how the empathy circle works, and we'll be going into circles and the facility. It's one of the best ways is just to learn by observing. Most of the people here know how to do the practice. You can just observe, and the facilitator will also kind of help show you how to do it. So our topic is, what is the values that you see are important to a culture of empathy? And we'll be talking about that, and it's a very broad topic. And you can also talk about anything that's alive for you. So if you have something going on, you can also just share whatever's on your heart and mind, or whatever you'd like. So with that, I think we're ready to go into the circles. We're going to go for an hour and 45, no, about an hour and 40, hour and a half, I think, yeah. And then we'll come back 15 minutes before the end. We'll all come back together and do a debrief. And then when we do the debrief, you'll be able to share what the values were and maybe a little something about them. So Martha, do you want to tell us what the groups are, and we'll be going into
so
them.
we've got 3 groups today, and so Pavel, you'll have Edwin there to support you, and Dean, you'll have Bill with you, and I'll be in the 3rd room myself. Is that okay?
Okay, great.
Cool. So I'll see you after. It'll show up on your screen for you to join.
Okay, see you there.
That's all?
That's it. Yeah, it looks like there's just 4. So you're facilitating and doing the timekeeping.
So is there anyone who would like to start to speak first?
I'll go first. Speak to Sophia.
Yes, I'm listening.
Yeah, this is the 3rd time we've done this values of a culture of empathy, and this one is a broad topic again, and I hope that in maybe the next one we'll start looking at specific values. And next week, thanks to Pavel's prodding, I want to do the topic of empathy.
So this is the 3rd time we're doing an empathy circle on this topic, the values of empathy, culture of empathy. And yeah, you're hoping to do a circle about empathy. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, exactly. We're going to focus on empathy. And then I think the one after that will be maybe mutuality, because I see, it's like people can have empathy. One person, and I hear a lot of times people say, oh, people just, I listen all the time, but they don't listen to me. So what I would like to have so the next, I think mutuality is very important too, that if we have, like respect or compassion or empathy or openness, that it's about mutuality. It's not just, hey, I'm going to be open, I'm going to, and then everybody else is just going to sort of take advantage of me. So I think that value of mutuality is really important.
Yeah. So you're thinking about doing a circle about only mutuality, because you have seen that come up a lot of in these circles. People talk about mutuality, and that they are open and they are giving empathy, but they don't get that in return. So a lot of people have talked about this being mutual, being open, and empathic being mutual.
Yeah, but the one value that I'm sort of sitting with about a culture of empathy is, I don't know quite the word, I'm still struggling for the word, but I call it feeling awareness. It's being aware of felt experience. So not just totally being sort of abstract, but being sort of sensitive to what is the felt experience that I'm feeling. For example, I just saw you kind of move a little bit closer. And it felt like you were I felt like, oh, she's really paying attention. So it's something about a feeling of concentration, for example. And then because I'm sort of identifying what you're doing, I'm feeling that maybe that self-consciousness or that smiling too. So I feel that. And now you're nodding your head and I feel that sort of acknowledgement feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, so one value that you're still exploring is the value of being aware, and especially being aware of the felt experience. And the examples you used was me leaning in to yeah, that's my yeah, but you perceive that as me really concentrating. And when you saw me doing that, you became aware of you being self-conscious. And yeah, just it sounds like being aware is not only the felt experience, but also what you see and what you perceive.
Yeah, when you moved this way, I could feel that. Like when I do it, when we see an action and do the action, I can feel it, so I can feel, that feeling. So, and then how to be aware of the feelings and to be able to share them and to express them. That's another big piece.
Yeah. Okay. So when you saw me leaning in, you felt that. Mm-hmm. So it is a felt experience for you. And yeah, then you mentioned becoming more aware of your feelings and expressing them. Yeah.
Yeah. And empathy means to feel into. So it's very much about feeling and being sensitive to felt experience.
Mm. Yeah. So empathy to you is the being aware of the felt sense.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so Sarah. Are you listening?
Yes, I'm listening to you.
Hearing an alarm clock.
Yeah. Which one is? Yeah, now it disappeared. Okay, so I noticed becoming nervous because I'm talking to you and I've never seen you in these circles. And it's also always, I feel kind of nervous when I'm talking to a new person. So yeah, I just wanted to express that.
So what I hear you say is that you feel a little nervous because you're talking to someone new, and you kind of feel that whenever you talk to someone new. And I acknowledge that.
Yeah. I really think that what Edwin mentioned about being self-aware is very interesting. I like to, I really wanted to understand what he was, there's something that he wanted to explore. I became curious about it.
I am sorry I couldn't hear the first part of what you said. I think my connectivity kind of slowed down.
So just reflect the rest, what you heard.
I couldn't hear the first part because my network kind of shifted.
Okay, so I'll say that again. Yeah. I became really curious when Edwin mentioned self-awareness. Basically.
All right. So you felt really curious when Edwin had mentioned about self-awareness.
Yeah. yeah, the question is how do we become more self-aware? It's something that I think that a lot of the time we as humans, we react without having that awareness. So but I think that in communication with other people, I think for the communication to be effective, there has to be some self-awareness.
So what you're thinking regarding the question, which is how do you bring more self-awareness, is the fact that is what you feel that people react without much self-awareness, and in communication it is very important to be self-aware.
Yeah, exactly. And now I'm thinking, is that really a value, self-awareness? I'm wondering if that is value, because I think that self-awareness is something that we all have, but we're not aware of it. I don't know, I see a value as something that you can, it's like me having lips, sort of like, are my lips a value? That's the same thing when I think about self-awareness. It's just as, yeah, it's something that we all have. It's not a value. Yeah.
So you're wondering if self-awareness is actually a value, like an answer to the question, primarily because you feel that self-awareness is something that we all already have, but are not really aware of. And I think you gave the analogy of having like body part or lips, but not really being aware of the fact that if it's like a value or not.
Yeah. And now I became kind of nervous because I'm thinking, oh no, what if Edwin feels hurt by me saying that? Yeah.
So now you're feeling nervous about the fact whether it's what you said might have hurt someone, or was it the right thing to say?
Yeah. But I think that being in contact with the body, not only our emotions, but the body by itself, because most of us are all up in the head. I think that to really cultivate empathy, we need to be in contact with the body. I don't know if that is value, but I think it's important. Thank you. Yes.
Do I reflect on that, or do
Yes.
we move on? Oh,
Yeah,
all right.
you reflect and then we move on.
Yeah, so I think what I heard you saying was that to have a contact with the body is part of self-awareness, and it's a part of the experience of having self-awareness. Is that right?
No, I think that, yeah, self-awareness is something else, but being in the body, I think it's important to cultivate true empathy outside of being self-aware. It could be related, but yeah. Yeah, you can reflect. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying is it's important to be feel a part, like have a body and cultivate a sense and be a part of a body, and it's not necessarily connected to self-awareness, but it could be.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I feel heard.
All right. I think Pavel.
Yes.
So what I feel is as the answer to the question, what is the value for me as part of empathy would be respect is what I said. And I feel so because I've always felt wherever I go that respect is something that people are not really aware of.
So you were wondering about the answer of the question, and it came to you as respect, as you think that this is something that a lot of people are not aware of.
Yes, and why I feel so is because if you are able to respect someone as in see someone as they are or the person they are, then you build a sense of openness to them and not necessarily look at them as their identity or the color of their skin or whatever you see in front of you.
Mm-hmm. So you're able to see other people as they fully are, as in their purity, not just their identity, and this creates a sense of openness.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think I also think that when you create that sense of openness towards people, you can accept whatever they are going to share with you or whoever they are truly are, right? And not attach any kind of identities with them, which you might justify for their actions or what they do. So.
Mm-hmm. So when you're in this open space, when you have the sense of openness, you're able to accept people as they fully are without attaching their identity to it.
Yeah, right. And I think that's when you're fully able to understand people, and when you have that kind of respect for them despite their identities or what your judgments are about them. So that's what I feel, that you can completely accept a person when you see them as just a person and not your judgments about them.
Mm-hmm. So kind of like this openness and acceptance remove your prejudice towards other people.
Right. That's exactly what I was trying to say. And yeah, that's what I feel is kind of the core value for me about empathy. And once we all are able to build respect for people, and we can just truly, like I said, accept whatever they can offer without judgments, and also build a connection with them, because you're just seeing them as who they are.
Mm-hmm. So thanks to this value, you're able to accept the person and trust him and see him for who they are.
Right. Yeah. I think I feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Edwin, would you listen to me?
Yes, listening.
Like what Sarah mentioned made sense to me. It's like only when you allow yourself to be open, then you accept what's coming to you. And because you accept what is coming to you, then you're able to fully understand.
So you were sort of resonating with what Sarah said, and you were seeing that you have to be open, and if you can be open, you sort of take in what's coming at you, and then Yeah, so.
Mm-hmm. I just couldn't understand because she started talking about trust in the beginning, but kind of she left it out later, and I could not see where trust fits in. But I guess now, as I think that in order to open, you have to have trust towards that person. So it's like trust, openness, acceptance, understanding.
So she had mentioned trust initially, but you were kind of wondering where does trust fit in. So you're seeing sort of a series of, first you trust, then you're open,
You open,
and then you accept,
mm-hmm.
and then there was something else.
You understand.
Then you understand.
Yes. And on your conversation with Sophia, so you were talking about this feeling awareness and being aware of the felt experience. That's what it is. And Sophia mentioned, how do we become self-aware? And to me, the way you become self-aware is by observing from a third point of view. It's kind of like you step out of yourself in a sense. So that's kind of my answer. And then it's this my add-on to you, being aware of the felt experience. In order to be aware of the felt experience, your observation must go up. For example, you notice Sophia, she did certain movements. Thanks to your observation, you became more aware. Thus, your felt experience increased. That was kind of long.
I was a little distracted because Bill. Oh, yeah, but let me. So you're talking about how your observation increases, and that was sort of the part where you could, yeah.
Yeah, basically the way you increase your self-awareness is by being the observer.
Oh,
And by being aware of the felt experience is done through observing as well. Because when you looked at Sophia, when she did certain facial expressions, your observation helped you in this felt experience to become more aware of the felt experience.
Oh, so yes, that was it. You're sort of stepping back or stepping outside to observe, and that creates sort of a space for you to be able to observe the experience. Is that how you mean it?
No, but it makes sense to me, so it's good.
So I didn't quite get it, but what I said made sense.
Yes. And but something that you mentioned from the previous empathy circle, we were speaking about being self-aware, and then you have the awareness of your opponent and being aware of his awareness. So kind of like, I guess it will be very hard to be self-aware and be aware of the self-awareness of your opponent. So you mentioned last time, it's like you lose yourself. It's like you're not aware of yourself. You're more aware of his awareness.
Oh, so you're kind of exploring the topic of awareness, and you can be self-aware, or you can be aware of someone else. And if if you're aware of someone else, you might lose awareness of yourself.
Yes. And back then, someone said that's why it's important to have boundaries. But to me, this is so difficult to do, to lose yourself, that the topic of boundaries should not be even considered, kind of.
Yeah, so within this of being aware of yourself, or being aware of others, that people have brought up the topic of boundaries, but if you're sort of having this broad awareness, boundaries is not really part of it.
Mm. Yes. Um, and something I want to mention, Edwin, you always mentioned that empathy is feeling into. When I have these empathy circles with you guys, there is no feeling. It's like on mental level, I understand, I can empathize with you mentally, but this feeling it's not there. So is it really empathy, or there is just different levels of empathy? And I'm just tapping into one of these types of empathy.
Yeah, so in these empathy circles, it seems more mental to you. You're not really getting a sense of feeling into, and you're just wondering, is this like one aspect of empathy, or trying to get a better understanding of it? Or
my internet connection is unstable, but that's time for me.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Edwin.
Sarah? Sarah? Yeah. When Pavel said it seems more mental, my question is, what does mental feel like? It's like for me, mental feels, I sense my awareness in my head, and sort of a feeling of trying to create clarity, so that's for me what but mental has a feeling.
So you're saying, like, when Pavel mentioned about feeling what's happening in the head, or like how do you feel it mentally, what you feel is the feeling is about the clarity that you get when you think about what the other person is saying, or
Yeah,
what you
and sometimes the word mental, I feel is sort of in this part of my body, and sometimes it feels like it's kind of has a stress to it. It's like a controlling, trying to, really kind of grasp something. And so it has a felt experience to it. So even when people say, oh, you're very mental, well, what is the feeling of the mentalness, right? Because it's like everything has a felt experience to it. So trying to identify, that concentration, those feelings of concentration, of constriction sometimes.
So what I hear you say is, when you say that there's a felt experience, and what you feel mentally as well, it's kind of like a force of concentration that you feel when you think about things like these, or topics like these. So it's what you feel within your mind space, and the kind of forces that you feel there of concentration.
And I had thought of, in an empathy circle, when we start speaking, what if we first say the feeling that you feel in the moment, like I feel curiosity, and the curiosity is here. Where is the feeling located? It's kind of like a curiosity. It's located here in my body. So when we start sharing, what is the feeling that you're feeling, and where is it located, might kind of help deepen the conversation.
Yeah, so you feel like when we do start empathy circles, you might want to ask people, what do they feel at the moment, and where in the body, or where in their felt experience, or where in their space can they feel that feeling. Or like you said, it's maybe like curiosity, do they feel it here, or in some or there's another feeling that some other part of their body. And it will be a good way to start circles, to know, check in with people and how they're feeling.
Yeah, and my feeling was curiosity, and the feeling of curiosity sort of is in this part of my head.
So your feeling of curiosity is kind of at this part of your head, and that's where you feel the feeling of curiosity.
And then I notice that I'm focused in this part of my body, and I say to myself, well, what if I spread my awareness? And my awareness, I go out, what do I feel all around me? And for me, it feels kind of floaty and soft, and yeah, that's kind of, so that's the sort of the feeling I have is, oh, there's this, all these warm, floaty kind of feelings around me.
So when you think about that, the feeling that you have, or the feeling of curiosity, kind of concentrated on one space, and you think of like increasing your self-awareness to a larger space, how you feel about it is very soft and like it's flowing around you, and that's the kind of feeling that you get when you think of spreading that awareness.
Yeah, and then I'm kind of, now I'm saying, oh, what if I spread the awareness to you? I feel you're smiling. I felt your hands moving, you know, trying to, and I see Pavel moving. So there's a feeling, being sensitive to the feeling of all of us here, which is, I don't even know how to describe those feelings. You know, there's, you know, I see you're smiling and you're nodding, sort of an understanding, and I can feel it, but to put words to it, to those feelings is difficult. Yeah. You need a whole level. You need a whole level of having done it a lot to be able to just time. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you were trying to say is that you feel like that sense is spreading to the people over the screens and on the call, and you kind of feel it even from this distance, that when somebody else is moving or they're nodding their head or they're acknowledging what you're trying to say, even if it's by a facial expression, you feel it, you have that sense of awareness of what they're showing, but you can't really put words to describe it in its most accurate form. And you think that will come with a lot of practice and multiple ways of it.
Yes, feel fully heard. Thank you.
I can go, Sophia. Would you listen to me?
I'm listening.
Just give me a second. Right. I think I really feel aligned with what Edwin also mentioned, and also what Pavel mentioned, which is primarily the feeling that you get, even despite the fact that we're just sitting back in our homes in very different parts of the world, and we still feel we're able to feel heard by someone else across the screen, even if it's by the small gestures that we make. So I kind of really experience the same.
Yeah, so you feel aligned with both what Edwin said and what Pavel said, and you're just reflecting upon that, even though we're sitting in different parts of the world, and you can really feel the sense of being heard, and you can feel how the other person is hearing you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also what Pavel said about self-awareness is kind of like you stepping out of who you are at the moment and just looking at yourself as third person. It makes a lot of sense, but it's also kind of difficult to do it at the moment when you're engaging with someone or you're in an experience, right? We are so probably, I would call it, dissolved into the experiences around us or the people or a conversation. Some things just come very naturally or flow out of us even before we can process it in our heads. So I think, yeah, that's what I feel about what Pavel said.
Yeah, so you're reflecting upon what Pavel said, and that it makes a lot of sense to observe and be the third person who observes your your being self-aware, and your experience of that is that in conversations with other people, it's very hard for you to really have that awareness because you're so engaged with the other person. So it kind of like, yeah, it sounds like you're more in the experience of experiencing that person than thinking about being self-aware. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I feel about self-awareness in any kind of conversation or any kind of experience, and how important that is for empathy or being empathetic, is that I think for me, self-awareness would mean to just be very mindful about, again, what I said, which is seeing the other person as a person. And I think a lot of self-awareness comes out being mindful about your feelings or judgments comes from there. That if you are already aware about your judgments that you could make, I think that's the quick self-awareness or mindfulness you could go through, like a check-in with yourself before you start engaging with somebody or like an experience.
Yeah, so you're talking about being mindful, and you're relating that to self-awareness. That is what I'm hearing. And you just you talked about having no judgments before, and being aware of your judgments, and no, being mindful of your judgments before you start talking with that person. So it kind of like sounds like it floats together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I feel about what Edwin and Pavel said, and that's the thought that's alive in me at the moment. And I think I'm also thinking about what are the other ways you can actually be a little more empathetic while you're experiencing like a conversation like this, where you're trying to be as mindful as and engaging as possible.
Yeah, so that is your thoughts about what Edwin and Pavel said.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my head just went.
It's all right. Yeah, I was also wondering what are the other ways that you can be mindful.
Yeah, oh, okay. So you're wondering about the other ways that you can be mindful. Okay, self-aware, mindful. Yeah.
I think that's what I wanted to share. Thank you for listening.
So that's what's alive in you. Thank you. Edwin?
Yep, listening.
I'm noticing I'm very tired today. It's both the heat. We have a heat wave here in my town. Do you say that?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I have started a project in my home to sort of like live more minimalistic, and it's really, really overwhelming. So yeah, I have a hard time to sleep and fall asleep because I'm all thinking about decluttering and how to and then I wake up early and then I start thinking about that. So yeah.
Okay, so you're feeling tired because of the sort of the heat wave kind of makes you feel tired, as well as you're trying to declutter, and it's just causing a lot of thoughts. So you're thinking a lot, and it sounds like how do you declutter? You're waking up thinking about it, and it's just kind of a lot
Yeah, it's
going
overwhelming.
on. It's overwhelming, feeling overwhelmed with all the thinking.
Yeah. One thing that I've been thinking when I was listening to all of you is that I think that if you have a lot of trauma in your nervous system, it's harder to be self-aware. Yeah, you can reflect that.
Yeah, so you think that just if you've had a lot of trauma in your life, it's harder to be self-aware, kind of in the moment present.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about, I heard this somewhere that psychopaths can be empathic, but they can't be compassionate. I think it was something like that. So I think that people who have a lot of trauma in their body, they have a harder time accessing this kind of self-awareness. So before self-awareness, you have to do some kind of healing within yourself.
So you're sort of speculating, or perhaps speaking from your own experience, that if you have a history of a lot of trauma and a lot of trauma in your body, it's difficult to sort of access your bodily feelings because of all that trauma.
Yeah. So I think what most people, more or less, some people need to do more healing than others, but what comes first to really kind of embrace this topic, being empathic, you need to do some healing by yourself, and especially around your nervous system. Because if you're in constant fight or flight mode, it's hard to be present with others, and it's hard to be present with yourself.
So you're really seeing sort of the blocks to being self-aware and present with yourself and even others if you have a lot of trauma, and that you need to, it sounds like you need to on your own work through that trauma somehow to kind of heal it in some way.
Yeah. Not on your own, but with a therapist, of course. But I think it's kind of hard to create a culture of empathy when people are having so much dysregulation in their nervous systems.
Yeah, so it's hard to create a culture of empathy if people are just dealing with so much dysregulation and trauma in their own lives.
Yeah.
In their own bodies, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of weaves into what everybody's been saying about being self-aware and being aware of the felt sense, that I think that regulating your emotions, being sort of like not reacting on them all the time, but kind of like having that capacity to regulate yourself. I think that is important, especially when you're wanting to create a culture of empathy, basically. Yeah,
so in terms of creating a culture of empathy, that you need to be able to regulate your feelings and emotions, and so that's a core part, is to be able to have that self-regulation.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I saw it at the time, I just want to say that doesn't mean that you suppress your emotions, but you you can allow them, but then you can also hold them.
Yeah, so when you mean self-regulation, it doesn't mean that you suppress your feelings, but when you let them out, you sort of have space to hold those feelings.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. I feel heard.
Oh, okay. I'll speak to Pavel.
Yes, I'm listening.
Yeah, I'm just sort of sitting with what Sophia said. I do see that the healing of trauma and can be brought into the empathy circle as a way of sharing and getting support from others. So I do see that the empathy circle is a space for that healing to happen.
Mm-hmm. So you think that holding an empathy circles can facilitate the healing of these traumas that the individual went through?
Yeah, my concern with like therapy is that, you know, therapy is pretty much based on the empathic listening that we're doing here, but it's in a relationship of a client therapist. So it's within sort of a professional relationship. And as a client, you're only doing half of the part of empathy. You're just sharing, which is important, but you're not learning to listen to the other. So that's one of my concerns about therapy, is it's only half of the relationship, and it's kind of not equal. It's in a professional.
Mm-hmm. So you can see how empathy is in the key of a lot of therapy practices, but in this way you have like a relationship between the client and the practitioner, but it's only one way, where the practitioner is mostly empathic to the client, but you kind of think that they're missing on the opportunity of the client be experiencing this empathic experiencing empathy. He misses on the opportunity to offer empathy.
Right.
And this could help him with his trauma.
Yeah, and in other relationships too, like family relationships. Say, oh, I'm going to do a family empathy circle, or with friends. So it's really about learning the full spectrum of listening and being heard, right? Which is what we do here. We're all getting to listen, we're all getting heard, and we're also listening. So it's sort of that mutuality that brings in that mutuality. We have little mini culture of empathy here, because we're all listening to each other. And also being heard. Yeah.
So there is this sense of mutuality in our case. You experience to be the listener, and you experience to be fully heard by another.
And there is the aspect of sort of an emergency empathy. If someone's in great distress, they may need more time to be heard. And that's sort of what the therapy does, is it's sort of like an emergency empathy, like, hey, I don't have anybody else that listens to me. You know, I don't have any empathy circles to work this through. I need this emergency to kind of be heard. And so that sort of emergency, it has a role. I don't want to dismiss it as a role, but I think it could be expanded too. Yeah.
So often people going through the stress, they may feel this sense of emergency to feel hurt, and often in the psychiatric therapy sessions, this is kind of like the emergency, because the practitioner holds longer periods of time for you.
Yeah, and we can do that here. If with this empathy circle, we're learning to be good listeners, which gives us the strength to listen to someone else, to our friend or whoever, and give them that emergency empathy, give them the full half hour, an hour of listening. But here it's sort of like, this is sort of like charging I find it charges my batteries, right? My empathy batteries get charged because I get heard, which gives me sort of the energy to just go and listen to someone else without even needing to be heard, because I've already been heard here in the circle. So it kind of gives me that resilience and that energy to listen to others.
Mm-hmm. So that emergency situation of offering someone to, excuse me, time's up, I'm just going to reflect on that. So you can see the potential in the empathy circles for developing this potential to give that emergency listening to others, and participating in the empathy circles, it's like recharging our batteries so we can offer that to people outside this area.
And just to finish, it's metaphorically, it's that charging of the battery. So someone who's dysregulated, having a lot of stress, a lot of struggle, it's sort of like their charge, their empathy batteries is low. And if I'm fully charged, I can kind of give, some of that, empathy to them and help charge their battery metaphorically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you were speaking metaphorically about it, and it's in a sense that when we're not met empathically, it's hard to give empathy, and this is what's happening in the circles. We're met empathically, and then
I feel fully heard. Thank you, Pavel. That felt good.
Thank you, Edwin. Sophia, would you listen to me, please?
I'm listening.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to reflect upon. Or should I talk about the things I wanted to talk, or reflect on Edwin? That's kind of like what's going on in my mind.
Yes, so you're feeling overwhelmed by all the things that you want to reflect upon and you're thinking about, should I only talk about things that I want to talk about? So, yeah.
Yes. And yeah, Edwin is absolutely right. It's like I say it is mental, but this mental has a felt experience. So what is the felt experience? But I have a hard time identifying it. What is this felt experience? So it is a feeling.
Yeah, so you're just reflecting upon what Edwin said when you mentioned that being mental, being in the head could be a felt experience, but you had a hard time accessing that, it sounds like.
Yeah, identifying it.
Identifying it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I'm wondering is, how can I reflect in a deeper way? And I spoke with Bill. I just asked him what's his process of reflecting, how does he do it? And he mentioned the idea of when you listen, you just get the main idea. And when it's time to reflect, as you access the main idea, you use it as an anchor. And then different parts of the conversation start to pop up in your mind, and then you reflect. I'll pause.
Yeah, so you're just struggling a little bit, it sounds like, with how to be a good reflector, and you talked with Bill about it, and he said that just find an anchor. It sounds like a title, and that is how I interpreted it, and just see it as an anchor, and then kind of let go of everything else. Is that correct?
Yes, but I said to reflect on a deeper way, but it's also what you said as well. I didn't say that, but it is as well. And
to reflect in a deeper way. Yeah, that is what you want. Yeah.
But also being a good reflector. Anyway, so I have my own way of reflecting. I'm not doing it the way Bill does, and I would like to try to do it the way Bill does it, but I kind of worry because I haven't tried it. Would I be able to reflect properly? Because it's a new way of doing it.
Yeah, so you're thinking about trying out how Bill reflects, and it sounds like you're feeling kind of nervous and you have some worry about how that goes, but it's something that you're willing to try.
Yes, my time is, I have a minute. So in terms of psychopaths, yeah, that's what makes them dangerous, because by showing that they're empathic, they can win the trust of the person, and then that person goes in great danger. But there is no compassion from the psychopath, and that's why usually the psychopaths harm people. But the way they get them is by showing empathy to them. I wanted to share much more about on the topic, but there is no time. So thank you, Sophia. I feel fully clear.
Shall I reflect? I can do
Yes.
that. Yeah. So on the topic of psychopaths, it sounds like you agree that psychopaths can have empathy, and that is why they are so dangerous, because that is how they gain trust with people, so that they can harm them, and yeah, it just shows that there is a lack of compassion within them. So, and you feel like you have a lot more to say about that, but there isn't enough time.
Thank you, Sophia. I feel fully clear.
Thank you. Okay, I'll switch back to you, Pavel.
I'm listening.
Yeah, now I don't know where I just want to say how I reflect, and I really enjoyed how you said the reflector, because it sounded like a kind of like a toy, the reflector. So that was kind of fun. Yeah, you can reflect that.
So you want to express the way you reflect, and at the same time it was funny how I used the term reflector. It sounded like a toy in a sense.
Yeah. What I tried to do is that in the beginning I'm kind of slow, but when we go into the process, I try to listen for feelings. So even if the person is not expressing feelings, I can kind of like imagine what they are feeling, and then I mention that in my reflectors, my reflecting, and I do that because of that, I want them to be more aware of their body. So that's my way of kind of like reflecting deeper, and sometimes that is my guess is wrong, but yeah, that is what I do.
So in the beginning you have a hard time picking up in terms of when you have to reflect, but as the time goes on, you kind of catch up. And the way you do it is that you try to be aware for how the person is feeling, and you reflect that. And when you reflect that, it makes the person more aware of himself, in a sense. Of
Yeah,
course,
yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So sometimes you could be wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny. I'm so tired today. So I was just like, oh, we're having a normal conversation here. I was kind of like going outside of empathy circle. But yeah, that is how I reflect, and that is how I would like to, for when people start to like mention, oh, so when you said this, I'm hearing sadness or anger. I really enjoy that when people mention what I'm feeling, so that I can be more aware of my body.
So the way you reflect is also the way you want people to reflect towards you. And there is these key phrases of I'm sensing, I'm sensing that you might be feeling da da da. This is something that really touches you.
Yeah, and it's not that I demand that of people, but when they do that, when they guess my feelings, it's kind of nice. I enjoy that.
So it's not like you're demanding it, but it makes you really happy when someone does that to you.
Yeah. And just to mention what Edwin said about finding healing in an empathy circle, I really agree that it could be part of healing, definitely. But in these circles, we don't challenge each other very much. And a good therapist can really like call you out on stuff. So, and also I think that when we're working with the body and the nervous system, it takes different approaches that an empathy circle can't help with. Sort of like being in the body, being mindful of the body, what's happening now. Oh, my leg is twitching, that kind of thing. But it would be interesting to do an empathy circle where we only discuss the felt sense. That would be cool.
That's time, and I will do a final reflection. So you agree with Edwin that in a sense the empathy circles may serve as a healing tool to a trauma, let's say, but they're not challenging enough as in a therapeutic relationship where the practitioner may call out the client on certain things. And we kind of don't do that here. And at the same time, during the session with the therapist, there is more self-awareness than in the empathy circles. Am I getting it right, the last bit?
Yeah, certain therapists works only with the body, so it's kind of like what is happening in your body now, and that's not happening here in these circles very much. But it would be cool to do an empathy circle only talking about the felt sense.
So what I'm getting is that some therapists, they work more with the experience, what the client is experiencing within his body.
Yeah, yeah.
And it would be very nice if we try this, if we have an empathy session here as well about.
Yeah. And I just want to correct you. I don't mean that therapists call you out, because that people do that here and in empathy circles also, but therapists do that. If it's a good therapist, they do that in a compassionate way. And I think that yeah, people need to be really self-aware of that, what they are saying, so that the person doesn't become re-traumatized. So I think that therapists have more skill in how to say certain stuff. Yeah.
So you think that the way people do it, in the therapist, they do it in a more compassionate way, so they don't traumatize the person. So it's not like they call them out, but certain people do that in the empathy circles, and this can be quite damaging. Depends on the sensitivity of the person.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel heard.
Thank you, Sophia. Sophia, Sarah, would you listen to me?
Yes, I'm listening.
So I will try not to waste much time, but yes, you need to be able to regulate your emotions, and a therapist certainly can do that, and he's very mindful, so the person would not be negatively influenced. Where in the empathy circles, it's we allow for mistakes, and we may get hurt, but that's why maybe a value of forgiveness comes in. Sometimes we may not, even in the heat of the moment, we may not say something that we really mean, yet we hurt someone. And we should be able to forgive not only the people that hurt us, but forgive ourselves if we hurt someone.
Are you still there, Sarah? Looks like your connection might have frozen. Shall I reflect until, oh, maybe she's back. Let's see if she's back. Oh, there she's back.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. My internet is fluctuating.
You can turn off your video if you think it's a bandwidth issue. Might save.
Do you want me to repeat what I said, Sarah?
Yeah, I heard until I think you mentioned in the heat of the moment, what you experienced. So I think, yeah, that's where I heard it.
So in the heat of the moment, we may say something that we don't necessarily mean, and we may hurt someone and influence him in a negative way, but that's why forgiveness could be in one of our core values, and to forgive the person that said something to us that hurt us, but also to forgive ourselves for hurting someone.
What I hear you say is, I think you were acknowledging and reflecting upon what Sophia mentioned about how we can emotionally regulate it, to be able to emotionally regulate ourselves, as well as how a therapist can do like a quite compassionate job when it comes to like working with conversations that have trauma involved. So what you feel is maybe it may not be possible that like in an empathy circle, we need to be careful about what are we trying to say, that it doesn't hurt anybody else. But it's also the fact that there's forgiveness, which maybe at the moment you might feel something and you might react or say something. But in an empathy circle, we can practice forgiveness as a part of that.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that is absolutely correct, Sarah. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Edwin?
Listening?
Right. I think right now what's on my mind is like a completely new experience for me, where people are just actively listening for the very first time in my life, and I can see it in front. So I'm kind of like overwhelmed by the experience, because I think 30 minutes back I was very confused what exactly was all of you trying to do here. But it's kind of like I think I can feel the experience right now.
Okay, so you're feeling overwhelmed by the experience of everyone actively listening to each other. And when we first started, you were feeling a feeling of confusion about what's going on here, feeling that confusion. And you're kind of getting a better sense, maybe more clarity or feeling of understanding about what we're doing.
Yeah, right. And I think there were a lot of many very connected but different things that were spoken of in just I think the last 10-15 minutes. What I felt about the idea, I think what I feel right now is the act of just reflectively listening, how it can serve a sense of healing, because even in a therapist's office or any place, most people really just want to feel heard, and it's not just the release, but to be acknowledged that whatever they are feeling is valid, or that emotion at that particular moment is valid. So I think I kind of agree with that fact.
Yeah, so you're just seeing the importance of listening. People just want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be acknowledged, and you're just seeing the healing, perhaps the benefits and the healing aspect of that.
Yeah, and along the lines of what if we can do an empathy circle of this sort, where people can talk about their trauma or some similar experiences. It was something that I've been thinking since quite some time, and that's probably why I came into this session as well. If that's, it looks scary to me to conduct such sessions or hold such spaces where people come together, and especially if you're facilitating, I felt like it gives you a sense, like a responsibility to do something when something like this comes out. So I was scared about it. And when Sophia said it, I kind of remembered how I felt when I was thinking about it.
Okay, so you've been thinking of maybe holding some kind of dialogue for people to talk about maybe past traumas or sort of issues. And it's something you've been thinking about doing, but then you feel some fear as being the facilitator, and maybe all feeling of responsibility and all that could happen. So yeah.
Yeah. And right now I kind of realize that it's probably just, I mean, when I was doing this conversation, I kind of tuned into how I listen. Do I listen actively? Do I not listen at all? Or do I reflect like I do, I'm doing right now? So it kind of put me into thinking, what do I do in a conversation in general?
Yeah, so if you're thinking of how do you actually listen in general, kind of the topic here was about how do we listen, and so it's just gotten you thinking, how do you listen to people in general? It's just kind of a curiosity of that.
Yeah, and I realized I kind of really don't, like I listen, like I'm in my face, it comes out like I actively paying attention to people. But if in most of my conversations that I've had with people, if I'm asked to reflect back like this, I maybe would not be able to. And that's primarily because I think I personally kind of end up thinking a lot of responses in my head, like how do I respond to what the other person is saying? And always feel obliged that I need to say something accurate at this point, especially when someone's sharing like trauma or vulnerability. There's always a sense of responsibility at the back of my head.
So when you're listening, you're noticing that it sounds like you do pay attention, but then in the back of your mind, you're thinking of the things that you're going to say. And there's sort of a feeling of responsibility that as a listener, you have to be responsible for like something, there's some kind of responsibility there for your listening.
Yeah, but I mean, right now I feel that it's just about reflecting back to them what they just said and just ensuring that the person feels heard. And maybe that's enough for someone at that particular moment to feel, feel comfortable. And maybe that's my responsibility at that moment to them.
So maybe you're getting a little clarity that all that you're really responsible for is just to reflect back what it is you're hearing them, instead of kind of all these other things that are going on.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I will speak back to you. So yeah, it was a good question about how do we listen, be thinking about how do we listen. And I really appreciate Sophia, saying, well, she listens for the feeling, which is something I do as well.
Yeah, so you're happy that the question of how do we listen has come up, and we're discussing that. And also you like the fact that Sophia said that she listens for feelings in a conversation, how the other person is feeling, and you do the same in conversations.
Yeah, I listen and I sort of try to feel the person. It's like, what am I feeling? And like I heard you mention the feeling of responsibility or some anxiety. And then my antenna goes, oh, a feeling. And then I try to reflect back that feeling that I'm hearing.
Right. So you kind of build a sense of awareness about what the other person is feeling, and the moment you get a sense of it, you're able to identify, or you're able to point it out, or like pinpoint it in your mind that, oh, this is the feeling from this conversation, what you're getting from the other person.
Yeah, and then I name it. And then there's another aspect too, is the feeling that it's the feeling that someone has. And then there's the feeling of maybe of what it is that they want. What is the feeling that they want? And then so you make a guess about, oh, they want, if they're angry, maybe they want a feeling of calmness or connection. So that's kind of going a little bit deeper, and that can kind of help too.
Right. So it sounds like there's one aspect where there's the feeling that people have when you're in conversation with them, but there's also a feeling that they want, right? So there's maybe the sense of anger, like you said, but then they want calmness. So to also be able to sense that is also like a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's sort of the feeling aspect, the naming. Another that is sort of the perspective, and the perspective. So you're saying, oh, I hear you say, right, that you're as yourself, you're saying what you're hearing me say reflected. There's another, and I'm not sure what it's called, first person singular, where you reflect as if you are me. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like you don't say, I hear you say. It's like if I say I'm angry, and then you reflect back as I feel angry, right? There's there's a perspective of your, I think that's first person singular. I'm not sure but it's like, from what perspective are we sort of speaking from? So that's another, and I would like to do more experimentation, more trying that other approach of saying it as if I'm the person who's just said it.
Okay. So you're saying that there's one part where we are, even in this conversation, we are telling each other when we are reflecting that I hear you say, or it's like a second person conversation, but you're trying to understand or probably experiment how can we communicate in a way that you can reflect it like you are the person who just spoke to you, right?
Yeah, so that would be another aspect. And there's, this work is based on the work of Carl Rogers, who really, did a lot of work. And there's sample videos of him doing like an hour listening. He was in the client therapist mode, but he would listen to someone for 1 hour, instead of 5-minute turns, he would just listen to one person for an hour. And he would actually do that. He would shift between perspectives of, sort of like, I hear you say, to, oh, I'm angry, or, I noticed he would sort of shift, and it's a good way to kind of learn by watching some of his recordings, because there's a bunch of the recordings.
Yeah, so whatever we are doing, or this empathy circle work, has been taken by Carl Rogers' work, and you've seen him doing sessions or videos where he's listening to people for a long hour, and he has tried that perspective that you're also trying to experiment with, where you can just reflect back what the other person is feeling or has mentioned as yours.
And I just noticed Sophia yawn, so I could feel this yawn, and I could feel it come into me. And when the yawn comes in, it's like, I want to yawn too. It's interesting how yawns work. They're almost like, I've seen them be used as empathy tests, because you're feeling the yawn and it kind of comes into you, and then it makes you yawn too. And you're sort of taking on, the feeling of yawning is sort of cascading in your body. So it seems very much connected to empathy.
So you connected empathy with what Sophia just did, which is yawning, and you kind of connected it in a way that when she yawned, you could also like sense it, and then it came upon you like you also wanted to do the same thing.
Exactly.
And that's probably how you understand empathy as well, how it flows.
I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Sophia?
I'm listening.
Right now, I'm just thinking, what if I just run out of thoughts in like as we go round and round? Yeah, I think that's what's first in my head.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're scared because you may run out of topics to talk about.
But I think it's also about like the time here is 12 a.m. and you're all sitting in like a sunny portion of the world. I don't know where Pavel is sitting. It's dark there. So yeah, it's probably the time. But I think what I'm feeling right now is how we're just kind of anchoring back into the topic, which is empathy, and what is the value of empathy that we are trying to bring here.
Yeah, so you think that it's something about you're worrying about time. Is that correct? Yeah. And just reflecting upon that, it's dark where Pavel are, and then yeah, it sounds like you came back to kind of like wanting to talk about our topic for tonight.
Yeah, I think I'm also wondering, like, I think the session was called the values, 10 values of empathy. And I've been kind of wondering if I mean, we spoke about awareness, felt awareness. We spoke about 4 different things here, but I'm also thinking about what are the other, probably 9 or beyond that, what are the other values that we could deeply think about of empathy.
Yeah, so the topic was what are the values of the empathy, and one of the things that we have talked about here is self-awareness, and then you're just sounds like you're curious to kind of like explore further on what other values there could be. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just remembering something like one of my friends said about empathy, and the person said to me that, I mean, this kind of changed the way I look at it. It didn't change. It made me think about what empathy meant to me so far, which is the person said, there is nothing as such as empathy, because you're never able to experience what the other person has experienced, or you're really never able to be in somebody else's shoes. So how I kind of defined it is as that pursuit of just trying to be in somebody else's shoes might be empathy, and not necessarily being able to completely feel it.
Yeah, so you're mentioning a friend saying that it's not possible to actually be in another person's shoes, because it's not possible, but rather than that made you reflect upon that, the pursuit of wanting to understand them, wanting to empathize with them, that is what the aim should be, not to kind of like walk in their shoes.
I think I'll leave everybody with that thought, which I also had. Thank you.
Thank you. You're leaving me with that thought.
I feel heard. Thank you.
Edwin.
Listening?
Yeah, I was yawning because as I said, I'm very tired today, and I was hoping that nobody was focusing on my yawn. But then you kind of talked about it, and you talked about it for quite a while, and I was like, oh no, I hope he doesn't think that I think what he says is boring. I'm just tired. Yeah.
Okay, so you're tired and you were yawning and sort of hoping nobody would sort of notice the yawn, maybe even covering it up a little bit. And then it was like, then I pointed it out and was starting to talk about it. And then you had some feeling like, oh, I hope he's not feeling like I'm not interested in what he's saying. And yeah, so kind of concerned about how it would impact me.
Yeah.
And you're feeling some humor too. Sounds like feeling some humor about it.
That was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because I was actually thinking that I hope nobody sees this.
So it's funny because you're like thinking, you were actually consciously thinking, I hope nobody sees it, and somebody saw it.
You called me out.
Yeah. Like I called you out like a good therapist.
And I've been feeling kind of like my mind is kind of scattered today. I've been kind of like sitting and watching Sarah's scarf thinking about it and like, oh, I wonder how I would look in that scarf. I think it's beautiful, but no, I think my eyebrows. I think I need thicker eyebrows because you really need to have a kind of like. And I was like sitting and thinking about that, and yeah, my mind is kind of like really scattered.
Yeah, so you're just noticing your mind is all kind of scattered, and just you're pointing out some of the thoughts you were having of noticing the scarf, and then actually imagining what would it be like if you like it. It's like, what would it look like on you? And then you're thinking, well, my eyebrows are too thin, or they're not thick enough. Thicker. I need thicker eyebrows to look good.
Yeah, but I really like how it's kind of like on this side here. Yeah, I think that's very beautiful, but I'm not sure if it would look good on me. Yeah.
Yeah, so you see there's a feeling of beauty on Sarah, but for you, you're not sure if it would look good for you. And you're
Yeah.
thinking about it, maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try out a scarf and see how it looks.
Yeah, so maybe try it out yourself, see how it looks stylishly.
Yeah. And I'm just aware of that. I'm not talking about the value of empathy at all.
Yeah, you're not talking, notice I'm not talking about empathy, I'm just talking about what's going on in my mind.
Yeah. I really enjoy how the kind of circle goes deeper and deeper the longer we talk to each other. I notice how my mind is kind of like calms down. So yeah, that's why I show up here so much, because I think it's a very soothing practice.
So you find this soothing practice, and you notice that over time you go deeper and deeper, and then as you go deeper, you start calming down as well. And that's why you keep coming back, because you have appreciation for those feelings.
Yes, thank you. I feel heard.
Okay. Oh, great.
We're about to leave.
Yeah, we got our breakout room to come back. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for facilitating, Pavel.
And thank you, Edwin. Before we go back in the main room, maybe that's a value to allow the person to express whatever is in his mind. I don't know how would we describe it as a word, but it could be as a value.
Yeah, we say that whatever's alive for you, you can share. There's no rules on what you have to talk about it. Yeah, so we always say that when we go into the circle, it's the topic plus what's alive for you. Okay, welcome back to the main session, everyone. So we've got about 14 minutes just to do a debrief about our experience. We kind of left it to the very last minute. We were talking to the very last minute. We've got so much to say. So what we want to do is go around and just share what was a value of a culture of empathy that came up, and maybe say, some words about it, maybe up to about a minute, I guess. And so, Bill, would you be willing to start off? You're muted still.
Okay, sure. What do I say? As we kind of drifted away from the topic in a way, and were more. What I felt is that we were talking about our personal experiences, and building a kind of a communicative base, for lack of a better word. We were getting the sense of each other, and we were learning to trust each other. And so a lot of things going on there, not easily intellectually defined, but felt very good. I'm always glad when see new people, and, I meet new people. And so I was very grateful for all the sharing. That's it.
Was there any one feeling, one value that stood out for you for a culture of empathy?
Sure. Emotional safety and growth. I feel that if there's a certain amount of emotional safety, then people get are sharing more freely.
Okay, great. Thanks. Endel?
Oh, Bill stole mine. He said that very nicely. That was kind of like what came up in our group was, yeah, people feeling safe to be vulnerable and put their walls down and that kind of thing. Yeah.
And any comments about the experience of the group, how it was for you?
Well, I don't know. I need some time to process things afterwards. Like in an hour from now, I'll know how it was for me. Right now, I don't know.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm like that too. I understand that. Thank you. Dean?
You're going to have to excuse me, I'm chuckling because I have to agree with what Handel and Bill said. It was very personal, very emotional, very healthy, and very trusting. So for me, it was trust. That was the main thing that I'll take away from that.
Okay, thanks. Maybe I'll share is for me, it was the value of feeling awareness. So we talked about being sensitive when we are to be good listeners and how do we listen? And it was about listening to others and listening for their feelings and sort of naming their feelings, and as well as the feelings that they may desire to have too. And that was the way we're talking about how we also go deeper, and over time that we, as we went, the longer the circle went, it's felt like it went deeper and deeper. And so, yeah, I really appreciate that. So that was me. Marta, do you want to go?
Yeah. Pleasure. And yeah, how we need more of it, and how it's
Oh, are you saying that the value of a culture of empathy is pleasure and we need more of that?
yeah, I suppose doing what feels right or what feels good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Sophia?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we, as Edwin said, we talked about a lot about the self-awareness and the felt experience, being aware of our felt experience. But then we also talked a little bit about respect, healing, kind of like healing yourself, and healing in the circle, and what is possible to heal in the circle, and what is not possible. Yeah, it was very pleasurable.
Thanks. Pavel? Thank you.
So one thing that we talked about was kind of like I aligned this. In order to trust someone, you need to have a sense of safety. When you trust someone, you open yourself, openness. When you open yourself, there is acceptance. You accept whatever comes your way without judgment. And when you do that, there is understanding. And when you combine all of these things, you come close to more accurate empathy. And then comes mutuality. It's not only you towards the person, it's the person towards you, going through the same steps. Forgiveness is something that came out as well, being able to forgive and forgive yourself. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Michelle?
it was really good circle. Just a lot of different topics came up, but the main one that stuck with me was the between scarcity and contraction. Like when we're listening empathetically and sharing, like coming from a place of expansion and abundance and generosity. And I think what was coming up then is like, you know, looking at what's in the way, what are the barriers to that, you know, so that it can come from like this more like selfless place, and then this idea of like self-empathy, like the more you fill up this one, the more that you can share. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was really cool. And there was a lot of other, there was one at the end of like just around subversiveness and like acts of, you know, going against the norm and going against conventions, and it just kind of made me realize is that like really, you know, to be really open and expansive is dropping all these other layers that I mightn't have necessarily identified was blocking my empathy, but I'm like, no, like anything that has my old condition, that has me kind of constricted, it needs to go so that I can expand out. Yeah. It's a really cool discussion. Yeah.
Thanks. James?
Yeah, to echo Michelle, we started out on this idea of abundance as a principle, the culture of empathy, and how that creates the possibility of generosity. And then we had a really fun time just looking at how valuable laziness, pleasure are, and how subversive they are to the status quo, and how subversive they are to this rat race idea of we'll all be satisfied in the future some magical time, and instead just kind of coming into what we have and actually experiencing the terror of not knowing what's going to happen, ironically, surprisingly, makes it possible to enjoy life.
Oh, thanks, James. Angela?
James summed it up beautifully. The only additional thing for me was the realization of a culture of empathy. It feels like there needs to be a culture of self-empathy, of self-love, in order for there to be a culture of empathy.
Okay, so self-empathy is a part of a culture of empathy.
Yeah.
Great. Sarah? Ali?
Yeah. I personally felt it was a very different session because I've not attended some session like this before. So I felt it was very unique as an experience. The value that stood out for me, I think there were a lot of things that we spoke in our circle. And what stood out for me is that a culture of empathy is just listening and just being able to reflect back what you hear and authentically listen rather than just listening. So I think that's what I'll take home from this session today.
Okay, thanks. Sarah?
Yeah, I do agree with Bill about the group really created a lot of emotional safety and was exploring a lot about reflecting back on biases and how to communicate in a way that's understood.
Okay, thanks. So the past 3 Friday empathy cafes here, we've been looking at what are the values of a culture of empathy, sort of at a broad, open-ended sort of exploration. And we're going to start going through some of the specific values, kind of a deeper dive. So I'm not quite sure what will be next week, but it might be like empathy itself being the value next week, and then the week after would be maybe mutuality, and we'll kind of do a deep dive into each of the individual values. So I hope you come back for that, and we'll be I'll be posting it on the event page, what the values. Have to think about which one we'll explore next week. So in terms of next steps, I'm going to put in, there's in that the on arrival document, that Google Doc, you can add your contact info, and there's also a link there to the upcoming events, because we have every Friday the Empathy Circle, this Empathy Cafe. After this, in half an hour, you get the same URL. We have a facilitator support group. So if you're interested in facilitating empathy circles, you can come to that, and you get 15 minutes to sort of share someplace you're wanting to facilitate, and you get support from fellow facilitators. Tomorrow, if you're part of the Extinction Rebellion group, we have, at the same time as this cafe, we have a cafe about the principles of Extinction Rebellion. That's the environmental group. If you're welcome to come to that too. And you can see there's a link there to the other events that we're hosting. So we hope you can join us there. So that's it. Is there anything, Marta or Bill, that I forgot? Oh, we have a facilitator training. There's also, if you see the events list, there's a link of facilitator trainings that will be upcoming. So hope you can join us for that too. So, alrighty, then that's it, and see you next time.
Hi, everyone.
Magic.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Do we want to have a
Bye.
debrief with the facilitators?
I think we have our next thing so quickly that.
Okay. All right. See you then.
Or do you? Wait a minute. Hold it. Don't go. Don't go. Let's do. Can we do 10 minutes? Just no more than 10 minutes, because I got to go to the bathroom. So.
Yeah, sure. I know.
Oh, let me stop the recording.